I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time, unless we are on Indie Mission.
It's
Woo
Indie
woo!
Mission,
Because
bitches.
we are covering Michele Quirke's The Fires of Treason for the
Fires of
next
Treason.
3 weeks. So you are welcome.
Mhm.
But before we get into the first 19 chapters of this book, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So my husband and I watched Fall Guy with Ryan
Oh yeah.
Gosling. Uh, my mom and dad had watched it and they were like, "Oh, this is a fun movie. You should watch it." It was a fun movie. I don't think that it was like one of those movies where I'm like, "This is the best thing ever," but I do think it's one of those movies where it like similar to when you and I, Hannah, recently watched Scream over on Patreon. Shout out Patreon. Go
Join us
support
over on
us
our
there. We'd
Patreon.
really appreciate it. Uh,
Listen to why Hannah loves Scream so
but
much from the bottom of my heart.
it really reminded me of our conversation about Scream, where it was Fall Guy was very much like making fun of the structure of action movies and things that happen at a certain point, and it was like, oh, we're at the climax of the story, so this is going to happen, or the main character does this, so this is going to happen, and then it happens. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so Ryan Gosling plays a stuntman in that, which is hard to believe because he's Ryan Gosling and he looks the way that he does. It's hard to be like,
Yeah.
how does this man not have a leading role? If he were to walk in as a stuntman, they'd be like, you're hired as the main actor. Like I just find that hard to believe. But they oh, and also the guy that he was playing the stuntman for was Pietro in the Avengers Age of Ultron.
Oh, fun. Okay, good.
So I was like, oh my gosh, it's the Age of Ultron guy. It's Scarlet Witch's brother. But
Oh, don't look up the history. Do you not know about Aaron Taylor Johnson? And
of the actor himself,
yeah. Do you
I
not know?
don't. I try not to. Is it
Oh,
bad?
so like this is all alleged, but his wife met him when he was 18 and she was 42.
Oh my.
And like he was like almost, I think he was like underage when they met. And then they were like,
Ooh,
oh no, like
don't
they
like
said he was
that.
18. And like the two began dating and were married. And she like he's like the like the stepfather of like her children who are all like his age. And he like
Hmm.
it felt very predatory. So a lot of people
Yeah,
talk
I did
about
not
like,
know that.
yeah, a lot of people talk about him because like his wife was a director on a film he was on,
Oh.
and she's like he like everything he
Hmm.
does is kind of like approved by her, and it's very
Oh.
strange. So
Well, I mean, he was pretty good in this Fall Guy movie. And I only know him from Fall Guy and Age of Ultron,
and
where
now the
he
sadness of
spoiler dies.
oh, I
And
thought you
then
meant
in
in
WandaVision is hilariously replaced.
by someone who was the silver bullet in another
Yes!
like
In an X-Men movie.
yep. Oh, what a good day.
I actually really like that X-Men movie. Uh,
I'm a huge fan of the X-Men movies. X-Men are my favorite superheroes,
I
so
was thinking about it the other day. I was like, I've actually seen a lot of X-Men movies, surprisingly. I didn't think that I had seen that many, but I've seen a lot of them. And yeah, that's one of
um
them because he has that moment. There's like that scene in there where everything's like in slow motion and he's like
yes.
going through there. Yeah, it's very funny. I really like that one. But anyways, so Fall Guy was pretty good. Emily Blunt is the female lead in that, and she doesn't have like a ton of screen time,
Yeah.
surprisingly, but I do think whatever moments she gets, she does a great job with. I'm actually a pretty big fan of her acting work because I think
I
she
feel
is
like we
that
don't
type of
give her
actress.
enough credit. Like
Yeah,
she is a good actress.
she really is. I'm also saying this like I don't know anything about her, so if there's anything bad, I guess point it out now so I
I think
can be like,
she's fine.
oh,
She's just
whoops.
married to John Krasinski, and sometimes they're just white people,
Okay.
normal stuff.
Well, it happens to all of us. Um, I'm white. Uh, Just pointing it out for people. This is
It
an
happens
audio
to the best
format.
of
There
us.
might be some people who couldn't tell
I,
by my
y-
Midwestern accent.
I don't. I think they knew. If this is the first time you're
Longtime
tuning
listeners
in,
know, but if this is your first episode,
listeners know.
newsflash, I'm
Happens to the
white.
best of us, honestly. Newsflash, I'm white too, so we're sorry.
This is we really are.
Dude, I watched the SNL skit of what's that one comedian, the clean comedian? He was on SNL. He did the
The
George
George
Washington
Washington
guy. Yeah, that one. I watched the
one, where
one of
Keenan
him,
keeps like asking him like, but freedom for all, right? And he
and he's
just
like,
ignores him.
Nate Bargatze. But he also does one that is so funny, and it's like an Iron Chef one. Have you not seen this?
I haven't
It's an
seen the Iron Chef one.
Okay, so it's like it's supposed to be like Southern food, and it's him and a black woman, and they bring out like, oh, we have like collard greens and cornbread, and like, and then they're like, and for the other, we have a catfish like souffle, and it's like this like French cuisine, and they're like, well, someone knew what she was doing. And then you find out that it was Nate Bargatze who made the like traditional one. And they're like, what? And he goes, I don't know. I'm sorry. And they're like, but you were raised with this, right? And he's like, no, I am sorry. And he just throughout the entire thing keeps apologizing. And then they like at the end give him a jacket from like Howard University. And he goes, oh, please take this off me. And you can just he's so uncomfortable during the entire thing and just keeps apologizing. It's so funny. You have to go watch it after we get
I'll have
done.
to watch that. He
Uh,
he has had several SNL skits that I thought were actually pretty funny. Like
he's
I
a
don't know
very
anything
funny
about that
man.
man either, really, but just watching him on a couple SNL episodes because there was that skit where he was like the PGA golfer.
Oh yeah.
Did you see that?
I don't think I watched all of that
That one
one,
was a
but
little violent, but that that made me
he's
laugh a lot too.
he's a quote unquote clean comedian, and his father was like he was a magician who was at state
Oh.
fairs
Father
and
was a
like
magician, as in Jim Butcher, the Dresden Files.
yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sure that Nate Bargatze, I think his father was
Nate Bargatze should play Harry Dresden.
he's the right age at 40.
He meets the
Um
qualifications.
he is 45. So he I really like him. He's a very funny man. And
He
his
does a very good deadpan, like just that stare off into the distance. Like, nope.
I think
Like his
about
facial expressions are really good.
I think about him going, I don't read, and I think that matters. And I think that matters.
Honestly,
His
SNL
father,
has had some really funny skits recently. Like, I can't tell you how many times in my day to day that I've been singing that Domingo. Hey,
oh my
Matt,
God.
came to
Came to
explain, had to explain, came all this way.
I watched that because we were about to get married, and my sister was making a joke like, "Oh,
I wish we could have done that at your wedding.
yeah." She was like, "I looked at it to see if we could do like something funny," and then she was watching it. And she was like, "Not applicable," and she just like
Ah!
clicked away. They did sing a song for me though, because my
Yes.
sisters do that. But
Yeah.
I was singing that to Paul the entire week of our wedding, where I was like, straight from, and he's like, "If this is
Hey,
Domingo, I'm
Matt,
gonna be pissed."
came all this
Like,
way, had to
had to
explain
explain
straight
straight from
from
Domingo.
Domingo.
She's like a sis, but
This is
we
my
did hook
friend.
up though.
She's like a sis, but we did hook up though.
Is this just a song where you guys are saying that Kelsey cheated on me?
And not for nothing, but the rhyming scheme is totally
And then she's like, you have to listen to the words. And he's like, that's all
that's
I'm
all I'm
doing.
listening to. If that's Domingo, I'm gonna be pissed.
pissed. Oh my gosh. Welcome to SNL Hour,
Also,
everyone.
I just really love Marcello. Like
He's
he
so funny.
is so funny. What a great addition to the cast. They have actually a really good cast right now.
They do. I like their cast right now. They're very funny. But Nate Bargatze, you should watch his stand-up comedy because he is a very funny man. I do
Okay.
like him quite a bit. When he talks about his dad being a magician at state fairs, he's like, my dad had to go up against a donkey doing an 8-foot jump. And I mean, at that point, you're just watching a donkey fall, but they can't say that because PETA would come after them. It's so funny.
Just watching a donkey fall. Oh no.
Donkey dives,
How
and he's like, the
sad.
donkey is not diving, guys. It's just a donkey falling into
Oh
water, and that's
no.
pretty impressive. So, um, I highly recommend Nate Bargatze. Sorry for going on this
Okay.
wild tangent.
What was I
Laura,
talking about?
Fall Guy.
Fall Guy. Yeah, Emily Blunt did a good job in that, and I think she is one of those actresses where it's just like you give her 5 minutes of screen time and she does everything with it that she
Hmm.
can, even if it's just like very small, subtle things. I think she does a really great job. And I think I am actually like thinking of like works that she's been in. I'm like, I don't know
Devil
that I've
Wears
ever
Prada.
seen I don't know that I've ever seen her in something where I'm like, I don't think she did a good job because she always does a really good job, even if it's just a minor role, even.
Yeah. Actually, I do know that John Krasinski was obsessed with Devil Wears Prada and he like wanted to meet, like he got starstruck when he met her.
Well, when he married her, apparently, like he went overseas one time and somebody stopped him at an airport gate
And they were
and
like,
they were like,
"You?"
"You're
Yeah.
married to her?
They were
Seriously? You?"
offended on her behalf.
And I'm like, seriously, all these girls that were pining over Jim on The Office, they're like, yes, of course he did. And I'm like,
I'm sorry,
"Mm,
Emily Blunt is a dream and she is
yeah,
incredibly beautiful. So you
yeah, yeah,
are,
yeah,
in fact, incorrect. So,
yeah. But yeah, I think Emily Blunt did a great job. I think she and Ryan Gosling, honestly, they had a lot of chemistry in my mind. I don't know
I
how you
get
wouldn't
that.
have chemistry with either of them because they're like some of the most attractive people ever, where I'm just
Yeah.
like, they can probably have a conversation with a rock and you're like, wow, what excellent chemistry. But I also appreciated though that like the casting of the two leads, they were similar ages. And I don't know like what the ages of the movie that they were in, like how old they were supposed to be in the movie, but
Hmm.
they're both like around 42, 43. And I kind of appreciate when we have love interests that are close in age
Oh my gosh,
anymore.
I'm so angry at all the movies coming out where it's like Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield. Like one of them is very young. Why are they together?
Yeah.
Just
I
put him with someone who's his
And
age.
I'm not
Why?
saying that we can't have age gaps in movies. I'm not saying that. I have an age gap with my husband, but
Yes.
I just think that I kind of appreciate if we're going to be doing like a love story and something that the leads be closer in age. It seems a little less icky at times, especially when usually what we're used to in movies is like a huge age gap where it's
Hmm.
like this man is 60 and she is 30. But you know what? They are in love. And it's like, but he
Don't
could be her dad.
I
Okay.
don't mind age gaps. I just get really sick when it's like it's especially with
But it's
young
always like that.
Hollywood actresses and like 35-year-old white men. So like
Hmm.
Zendaya is in a movie coming up called The Drama and it's a romance film. And guess who her main love interest is?
I don't know.
Robert Pattinson. So he's
Mm.
like a 38-year-old man
I don't get the draw to him.
and Zendaya is like 28 and it's just like there's a 10-year age gap and yes it's
Yeah.
appropriate. I'm not saying it's inappropriate, but I'm saying like why can't Robert Pattinson be with women his own age for these movies?
Yeah. I'm also not saying it's like inappropriate if the people are like above 18, like
Right.
I think that's okay. And like I said, I have an age gap with my husband, so I don't really
Yeah.
have a lot of room to talk. It's not like I'm against age gaps.
No.
But I do think that it seems to be like very prevalent within movies and television where television less so, but
Hmm.
movies especially where we cast leads who are in this deep like relationship that we're supposed to be very invested in, and there's a
Yeah.
very big age gap with them, and then they also don't have like a lot in common, and it's just hard
Hmm.
to figure out like what the draw is to each other, and we're supposed to like really buy into it, and it's like but we need more context and we're not getting it, and yeah, and a lot of times they just kind of feel a little icky, and I don't know.
Yeah,
i
I agree.
I kind of think that it's maybe romanticized a little too much in terms of the age gap too, and
Yes.
I don't know, I not always a big fan of the age gap, but
Yeah.
it needs to be a little more nuanced, I guess. But I did appreciate in Fall Guy that like they looked like they were the same age, in terms of their pairing, and they also had good chemistry and stuff. I really liked one of the scenes where they're like on the phone together. I thought it was really clever. And yeah, it just had a lot of those moments like similar to what we talked about in our Patreon episode on Scream. Check it out. About how a movie is calling out tropes within its own genre. And
Yeah.
I thought that was fun. And obviously there's a lot of action in it because it's a movie about stunts and stunt doubles. So if you're into that, that's cool.
Yeah.
And there's some humor in it too. I wouldn't say it's humorless, but yeah, it's a pretty good movie. I wouldn't be like, "Oh, everyone needs to watch this." But I think if you're just looking for something like kind of light and breezy, like yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
good. Um, I've also been watching again with my husband, uh, Andor,
Oh, rewatching again. Go check out our TV Tuesday, guys. She has
shouting
rewatched
out
it
all the
recently.
yeah. So this is my what am I on for like fourth or fifth watch of
I
this
couldn't
show.
tell you.
It's a lot, and I'm sure my husband is just like when because this is his still like first time watching it because all the other
Mm,
times when I've watched it, I just couldn't wait for him, so I just kept going. But this time I was just like, you know what? I don't have any reason to just like keep plowing through this. I can watch it with him. So we're about halfway through the show and I have appreciated watching his facial expressions when certain things happen.
oh,
And
good.
obviously, Hannah, you've watched the show, so you know like some of the things that happen, and there's like certain events that occur, and he would be like, "Oh no."
Oh,
And I do kind of like that, and also just like some of the discussions that it has brought out in the two of us to have, like considering also like our current political landscape. I think that that has been something I've been enjoying as well, just to be able to chat about some of these things and
yeah.
how uh these things look when you're under like an imperial rule.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that I've just enjoyed that a lot. Also, I within my sci-fi realm still, I had the absolute pleasure of being able to beta read Jonathan Nevair's new book, Cosmic Widow.
Did you
It's
like die of happiness when he
oh my
sent it
gosh,
to
when
you?
he asked me if I would beta read it, first of all, I was just like, I did a little happy dance because
Of course.
listeners will, Hannah knows, but listeners will also probably know that I'm a very big fan of Jonathan Nevair's
Yes.
works. Like the Windtide trilogy is one of my favorites, and I also have really enjoyed his Agent Renault series. And this is like he's labeled it as a spy-fi thriller, which I think is appropriate. I think that's a cute play on words too, because Agent Renault, Lillian Renault, is a spy who is
Yeah.
working in an intergalactic space situation. And so she's doing all sorts of cool things in space with all these different types of aliens and beings and solving crimes and kicking ass. But this is the third installment. Cosmic Widow is the third installment of the series. And I'm not sure how many Jonathan has planned, but each book has kind of taken a different like direction. They've all been spy-fi thrillers, but they're all very different from one another at the same time. And this book was easily my favorite of the three so far. And I told him this too. It has a different feel to it and in a really good way. And I don't know if it's just that he's becoming like a little more entrenched. He's like in the trenches with the characters or what's going on, but it really the writing feels different. The way that the characters are written feels a little different. And I feel like maybe me as a reader, I'm starting to feel more connected to them as well, that I'm a little more invested in the series and Lillian and her grandmother as well at this point. But I really enjoyed this one. This is more of like a whodunit situation and a
Okay.
mystery. And we're getting also elements of like there's some stolen art is what happens. So we're getting elements of like the history and the mythology of why certain art pieces are created and what the motivations for the artists would be. And then we have these other things that are brought in terms of like the connection and build up for the clues as to who would have committed the crime. And I think all of it was just done really, really well. And I think that Jonathan has really kind of come into his own with his series, and the characters, even the side characters, are growing and becoming more interesting. But I really appreciated in this book in particular the way that time was played with, and time was
Yeah.
very much like a construct, and the way
Oh.
that Lillian was interpreting the time that she had spent in her life and how she would go forward and kind of like being afraid to address her past.
Hmm.
I really found it like very poetic and there are things that I kind of think a lot about too. Like I feel like I get reflective about things like, oh, how have I been using my time? What are things that I think are worthy of time and thinking about my past as well and being afraid to be like, oh yeah, well, I did these things, or do I want to talk about this that has happened to me? And I think that it was really neat to see a character kind of accessing the past. And I really really thought it was really well done for a book that's kind of one that I would almost like label to other people as like, no, these are just fun, quick reads that you should check
Yeah.
out. That he was able to work in some of these deeper themes in regards to time and the passage of time and what we do with it. I really thought it was very well done. And
Okay.
if you're looking for something kind of along the lines of like even just a fast-paced sci-fi book, if you like mysteries, I wouldn't even say that it's like I feel like this series is very accessible in terms of the science that's included in it. It's not like you're going to read it and be like, I don't understand what that's about. I
Right.
don't know what these are. I think it's very accessible to a wide variety of readers. And I think that if you're really into a fast-paced situation a la James Bond or something like that, you would really like these books. And I think
Okay.
that Cosmic Widow is definitely the best of the three so far. And I'm excited to see what Jonathan does going forward with it because this one was, so, like I said, so much deeper in terms of the themes that were being brought up and also bringing in some like mystic
Yeah.
abilities, not necessarily ability, mystic situations to it,
Okay.
which really made it interesting and kept me really like glued to the page. But I I really enjoyed this book and I was absolutely thrilled that I was able to beta read it. And everyone definitely pick it up, pick up all of Jonathan's work. Like I said, the Windtide trilogy, some of my all-time favorites. I
Yeah.
love those. And I think there's some audiobooks too, of those if you're interested in audiobooks to check those out if you like audio.
Okay.
Beyond that, been playing a little Wingspan. I also got on BGA, Board Game Authority, the online gameplay thing. I don't have like a subscription, so I have to just play all the games for free. And
Perfect.
I'm very bad at them, but I think it's kind of a fun way to like check out certain games to be like, is this something that I would want to purchase? Because
Right.
I've recently, because I've really enjoyed Wingspan, I've been interested in kind of getting into board games more as a hobby, but it, board games are so expensive.
They're so
They're so
expensive.
expensive. And I
So
recently had this
expensive.
conversation with your husband
Yeah.
because I said board games are so expensive. And Paul was like, but so are books. And I was like, books aren't that
That's
expensive. And he made the very good point. If you buy several and often, yes, they are. And I was like, okay, fair. But it's a lot harder for me to be like, you know what? I'll drop 90 to $100 on this board game
right.
versus being like, I will drop $20 on this book.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I get it that it's all relative in terms of what we're spending our money on. I also raise goats, so
You know, just stuff.
throwing money out.
Also, goats give you joy.
I mean, I do get products from them as well. So there is that.
Yes.
But anyways, yeah, board games are an expensive hobby. So I've been watching a lot of people on YouTube play board games and also review board games, which I have watched so many YouTube videos on board games within the past month. It's become my new like I don't want to hear about anything, so I just listen to YouTube board game
Yeah.
reviews thing because
You're
my brain
slowly
can't handle
turning
things.
Laura is slowly turning into my husband because he often will just watch people play like video games and board games. So,
So yeah, I've been watching a lot of that, and then they often talk about like Board Game Authority on there to like, oh, if you check it out, this game is fun to play on Board Game Authority or whatever. So I started a
Mm.
Board Game Authority account, and I was like, you know what, I am bad at these games, and I think I'd rather play them like in physical, but this
Yeah,
is a good outlet to check out certain games to be like, is this something that I would like to play more of, that I would consider purchasing the game in the future?
that is
So
fair. Just so
also
you
I did
know,
purchase Flamecraft because it was on sale and it, it was on sale at Target and it is confusing to me a little bit. Like
okay.
if somebody knows how to play Flamecraft really well, please reach out because I don't know if I understand it. And I've
Okay.
watched several people play this game, and I'm like, you're going too fast. Like, how slow
Oh
do I have
dear.
to make the YouTube video for me to understand how to play this? So, Flamecraft is maybe throwing me off a little bit. Uh, Wingspan was a lot easier to learn, it seems, than
Mm,
Flamecraft. There's just a lot of things going on in Flamecraft. It's a very cute game, and that's obviously why I brought it because I'm like, I love cute. So I just think there's a lot going on that I need to figure out or maybe have somebody explain it a little bit better to me. And also I've been trying to play it in solo rather than play it with
mm,
my husband because when I've been able to get him to play a game, he wants to play Wingspan instead of a new game, so
of
fair.
course.
But yeah, I've been trying to play it in solo, which is a little bit trickier for me. So maybe I need somebody to explain this game to me a little more, or maybe I should just go on Board Game Authority and try to play it on there. Who knows? But that's what I've been reading, watching, and or enjoying. And I also enjoyed
Oh.
your wedding a lot, Hannah.
Oh, I know I'm married, guys. I've been married for 2 weeks now. So
Yeah.
thank you, everyone. No,
I
I
will say, Hannah, that was such a special day, and I I do think it was probably one of the most. My husband and I were talking about it. We were like, "This is probably one of the most fun weddings we've
oh,
ever been to," and it was so nice, and everything was just very touching, and you could just feel a lot of love in the entire room, just for you and Paul, and it was just a really great day, and we just had a blast.
I had like 8 friends tell me, like, I've just never seen you this happy. And I was like, was I a miserable person? Like, I know love doesn't change everyone, but it did change me apparently.
I
So,
know we left
uh,
around 10:30 because I was getting very
gosh,
tired.
I left at 11 because like Paul finally had to be like, we can leave the party early. And I was like, no, we should be staying. And then we like, there was a
I know I
whole
went over to you and
kerfuffle.
hugged you, and I could tell you were tired because I was like, "We're gonna head out. This was so great," and you're just like, "Okay, bye."
I was so tired. I was like
And I was
dead
like,
to
"Okay,
the
well,
world.
she's tired."
I I'd been up since 6:30 that morning and
Yeah.
it was like the day of all days. Like you're just moving the entire time and I was like dancing and my little nieces and nephews, we got married where there was a stage. So like the nieces and
Oh
nephews
yeah,
were all dancing on the stage and they were
they
having the
stole the
time of their
show.
life. Well, that's the whole point of little kids being there. You want them to steal the
That's the
show.
whole point of little
But there
kids.
was a moment where one of my sisters tried to cut off my little niece, and my father-in-law like shook his head at her and lifted her back up onto the stage. Like, no, no,
Yeah,
no,
everybody
let the
wanted them up
children
there.
dance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but there was a moment where like we had just got done dancing with them on the stage, and like my niece and nephew and I were sitting back there, and I was like, I'm tired. And I was just sitting on a chair. They're both like, I'm tired too. And my little nephew, who had been dancing all night long, walked up to his mom at 10:30 at night and he goes, Mom, I can't do this anymore.
Oh,
He was so tired. And she's like, so we have to take him home. He's done. And I'm like, no, that's fair. But we
they
had
were
a
like sweaty. They
Oh
were
my
dancing
God.
so
I
much.
was they were having the time of their lives. I got to our car and there was a whole kerfuffle with our car. Someone brought us the wrong car and I almost started
Oh,
crying. Not because like I was upset or because it ruined the night, but because I was so exhausted and I
yeah.
couldn't
You're just like, I want to
physically
get out of here.
I was like, I physically cannot think about my glasses were in there. I was like, I can't see in the
Yeah.
morning. And my sister was like, why were you so upset about your glasses? And I was like, I had getting ready clothes. Like I was fine. I could get home in the morning. We were 15 minutes away from my house, but I did not have my glasses and I don't want to
Uh-huh.
not be able to see people. And so it was just a
Right.
whole thing. But it was a great time. I was exhausted by the end of it. And I'm so happy I never have to plan another wedding again. Um,
It was such a great time though. And in typical Hannah fashion, she won't say this, but in typical Hannah fashion, she still on her own wedding day was more concerned about the needs of others on that day where she was going to get coffee for people. She was checking in with people to make sure, hey, are you doing okay? And like asking this of other people. And it was just like,
But
Hannah, it's about you.
I couldn't
Are
possibly
you
make it
okay?
about me. That sounds so selfish. There was a moment where I had like an hour by myself where I just drank a fake bottle of champagne by myself in a room while like everyone else
Mhm.
was like going to do stuff to like come
Mhm.
back together. And I was like, this is great. Like I get to spend an hour in my own thoughts and
You
reread a
know what? It's
letter
nice to
that
have that decompression time too, though. That was another thing that I kind of appreciated about your wedding day because honestly, like when I look back on my own wedding day, it's very much a blur to me. But I
yeah.
feel like we had a very condensed timeline because things happened a little earlier in the day. And
Yeah.
so it was like a lot more rushed. And I feel like on my wedding day, it seemed like there was a lot less downtime. But then again, you probably don't feel like there was very much downtime for
No,
you either. As if when you're the bride and groom, you don't feel like you have a lot of downtime.
there were certain moments that I built into the day that, like, luckily enough for me, I didn't care that much about group photos. Like, I wanted a
Mhm.
couple, but I didn't need a million. So I didn't really
Yeah.
want everyone to go outside with us and like have to curtail like 15 people to get
Hmm.
outside photos when we were all staying at the same location anyway. So I was like, nope, only Paul and I are going to go do pictures by ourselves. So we went out and we took photos, just the two of us with the photographer. And then we got to like chit chat about the day and how much we enjoyed it so far. And so that was downtime. And then we like got to go up onto the roof of the place we got married for photos, and that was
Yeah,
all
that
by
was cool.
ourselves. Um, so overall, I think I had a lot of downtime built in for myself. Like I got to read
That's
a couple
good.
pages on that day. Um, but and like I sent people out to like go give me lattes and do things like that. But I think it's
Hmm.
always like, I trust you when I'm willing to ask you to do tasks for me. So
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
the girl who married us is my cousin. She's one of my best friends. And I was like, could you go get me a latte so I don't have to leave this area? And she was like, totally, I'm on it. Like,
And she
but
did an excellent job too
it
as
was
your
so
officiant. I
good.
really want her to cover my funeral. I told her that. Like, it's probably the next big
She
event in my life. Could you cover my funeral?
she did such a freaking good job, and she like she brought down the house. She mentioned my mom. Everyone cried.
She really made it a moment that was touching and like that we all felt joy at the
Yeah,
same time as our sadness. You know what I mean? And I think that's such a unique ability to be able to deliver a message like that where you can sit in your sadness but still feel joy for what's
yeah.
happening around you.
Uh,
And I think everyone was really feeling that.
and it's so good. And I would say that what blew the night away was actually the coffee cart we purchased for $300.
No, that wasn't what blew the night. That was really cool too. Like everyone
Everyone
was
has
talking
talked
about
to me about
the
the coffee cart.
barista, but I think you had this live painter.
Oh yeah.
Uh, do you want to explain that a little
Yeah,
bit?
so my mom couldn't be here on my wedding. What a weird indie mission. We're just like, well, we haven't spoken in 3 weeks, so let's do a
I
breakdown.
mean, it's
But
important context because we both
uh
enjoyed this. So,
yes, we did. Well, my mom couldn't be there on my wedding day. My mom was incredibly important to me. She was one of my favorite people. I had to relearn to talk to friends after my mom passed away because I never told friends deep, dark secrets about myself because I always told my mom those. Like, she was such an important person, and her leaving left a hole that like could not be filled. So that is important context for my wedding because my wedding was always going to be incredibly difficult for me. It was made easier by finding Paul. Paul is my, he's my forever person. He's amazing. And he has a lot of the like things that make my mom special. So I get to see those
mhm,
in other people. But because she couldn't be there, my family has a tradition of like our family photo hangs in my dad's living room, and
mhm,
it's always a picture of a wedding. Like that's just what it's been consistently. And I kind of wanted to bring that into my home, so I had a live painter come and paint my mom into the wedding day. So it is a live painting of Paul and I being announced as husband and wife, walking down the aisle, and my mom and dad are sitting there cheering us on with the other members of my family. And the live painter did a wonderful job. She sat there for 6 hours just painting
it
and
was
painting and painting.
so neat too. And I can't imagine the pressure of being in that type of situation because this was a big wedding. For
Yes.
listeners who do not know,
And my
Hannah has
mom
a
has like,
huge family,
uh,
so it was a very large group of people, and throughout the day, the painter is working there and she's doing an excellent job.
yeah.
But there, to have the people come up behind you and be just like staring while you're doing your work, like that's a lot of pressure. I don't think I could even draw a cat if people like were coming and looking over my shoulder all day, like
Yeah.
and I can't draw that well. So
Right.
it would be just immense pressure just from that standpoint, but it was so beautiful. And like the scene that she chose was like you and Paul with your hands raised like in
Hmm.
excitement, and it was just a perfect depiction of the moment because like I said, there was a lot of sadness that Sue could I'm sorry,
You can name my mom.
that your mom could not be there, but even the painting itself just really it was it gave me goosebumps seeing it because it was a painting of your mom smiling. She was filled with joy, and then you could just feel the joy of that moment too, just depicted in that photo or that picture. And it was just really, really a great painting. I thought that was, in my mind, probably one of the neatest and like I again gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
Gave me this really surreal feeling to see that. So
It was
that was
she's
one of the neatest aspects of your wedding.
Shout out to the painter, because we have a platform so we can platform people. Christina Brewer, she works out of Wisconsin area. She was amazing. She captures live moments. I think in my head I originally wanted like a family photo, and she was like, "Well, I only do live
Mm.
moments," and so it was a little bit hard for me to pick the moment. But I think it is beautiful to have a photo of my mom seeing me announced with my
Yeah.
husband for forever. So it will
And
be
she's like
going up
right
in
there
my
on the standing like right there on the side of you in the painting too, which was really great.
so it'll be going up in my library. It'll be great. And I can't wait. So, yeah, we both enjoyed my wedding.
Yeah, it was
And
so
then
much fun.
for other things we're enjoying, a movie that I'm going to shout out Kanopy for because we watched it on Kanopy. But
Okay.
my sister-in-law recommended this movie to me. It's called Pride. It came out in 2014, and it shows the real life story of a group of gay and lesbian activists who raise money to help families affected by the British miners' strike in 1984.
Okay.
And it is a movie that starts with this activist named Mark Ashton, who is a real life figure. And he realizes that the police have stopped harassing the gay community as much because they've all focused their attention on the coal miner strike. And he decides to start raising money for them because they are just as disenfranchised in this like fight for the good fight. But he finds this group, lesbian and gay, support the miners, but of course they are lesbian and gay activists, so they have to have their name on the money they are given, and they struggle to find people who are willing to take money from gays and lesbians during the HIV and AIDS crisis.
Hmm.
And they find this small mining village. And they at first do not hear who they are, so they don't find out until later that it's and he there is a man who comes in and he says he's going to accept their money, and then they accept these people into their community because that is what they do for people who support them. And it is like
Hmm.
contentious in certain ways, but beautiful in other ways, where you get to see
Hmm.
these people learn about a different community that is different than theirs. Or there are moments where it's just a beautiful movie. You cry during it.
Hmm.
There's a beautiful moment because it has Andrew Scott in it. He is a famous British
Hmm.
actor, and
Yep.
he plays
From
someone
Fleabag. Yep.
who is originally from Wales, and this is a Welsh community, and he had been alienated from his own home village. And there's a moment where he comes and he visits, and everyone, like celebrates the fact that he has returned home. And you can see like
Hmm.
it's very healing, but it's also very hard.
Sure.
And he ends up feeling very strongly for the community because they accepted him. And there's so many moments where like people stand up to those who wish to bring them down, and they find an inner community in fighting for the rights of others. And I loved this movie. It has a stacked
I
cast.
was
I
just saying,
think,
I'm looking at the cast right now. There's a lot of people that I
yeah,
recognize.
it
Bill
has like,
Nighy, Andrew Scott, Dominic West, Imelda
mhm.
Staunton, Patty Considine. So
And
yeah.
Dominic West plays another real life figure. He was one of the first people to ever be diagnosed with HIV or AIDS,
Oh,
and
okay.
he is still alive today. And like the movie does such a beautiful job of like him saying like, I do not know why I am alive. None
Hmm.
of his, and it shows like I don't think we have necessarily understood the HIV/AIDS epidemic
Hmm.
and what it did for the gay community, where we don't like a lot of people who say they do not see a bunch of older gay people do not understand that it is a revolution to see those people
Hmm.
alive today because they were part of something that people did not care about figuring out the
Yeah.
cure from.
Hmm.
And it's amazing to see those people still existing in the world today and seeing
Hmm.
what can come out of, beauty and fighting for the good fight, because these people were up against
Hmm.
all odds. And it's an amazing movie. So like go watch it.
Okay.
um I had moments where I was like, please don't like show violence on screen because I can't handle that this week. And
Sure.
there is like no violence shown on screen. There's of course some,
Hmm.
physical like fighting and things like that, but
Hmm.
it's beautiful. And it reminded me think about, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, where Raymond Holt says to Rosa, like, when people become truly themselves, like the world becomes a better place. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what this is showing. And I'm all for it. So definitely go watch that movie. It is on Kanopy, which means if you have a library card that has Kanopy, you have the
You
ability
have
to watch it.
access.
So go watch it. And then For reading, I also read via audiobook Educated by Tara Westover. Have I talked about this yet?
I've read this.
Oh, okay. Isn't
I
it
read
so
this many
good?
years ago. Yep.
I loved the audiobook. It was so amazing. This is a nonfiction book. It's a memoir of this woman
hmm
who was born into a survivalist mountain group in Idaho. Like her
hmm
parents,
her parents were basically doomsday. Her dad
preppers.
especially was a
Yeah.
doomsday prepper, always worried that the world was going to end, and so he was doing all these like extremist things.
And it's a hard book because she is
Yeah.
abused by her brother and then later ostracized from the family for being honest about what happened.
hmm
And and not sexual physical abuse, I will say,
hmm
because that is an important caveat.
hmm
But it's interesting to listen to all of this and to listen to the hard dynamics that come and are involved
Yeah.
with this type of thing because she didn't set foot into a classroom until she was 17.
Yep.
She fought for
College
her.
was really a turning point for her.
And it has interesting moments of like sometimes I think it's easy to judge people who are coming from these types of
Yeah.
backgrounds.
hmm
But like she has moments where she had to have one of her suite mates teach her that she had to wash her hands with soap because she was never
hmm
taught that. And they had to teach her like, hey, when food is rotting, you have to clean it out. You can't just like she didn't know about washing dishes in a certain way. She didn't
hmm
know about all these different things. And then she fights for her right for education, and she is kind of left behind by her family after she
Yep.
does this because they couldn't handle it. And there's a lot of context that goes into it. One of her brothers is educated, but he he is still welcome within the family, and it's very specific. So I thought it was a
hmm
very good book. It was very
Yeah.
eye-opening, and I had a lot of fun with it. And then
I think it's one of those books that's like shocking to, at least it was to me, uh, because I think that a lot of people, when you're growing up in certain communities, you do have a certain level of like deconstruction that you have to do,
yeah,
or maybe not, but a lot of people do.
yeah,
But I think that it's a little shocking for someone like me who has a lot of privilege to know that there are people who are growing up in situations like this, who are
hmm
in some isolated communities or situations that
yeah,
they might not have access to even get out of the situation that they're in. And so a lot of the things that because I also did the audiobook for that, for Educated, but I think that listening to a lot of that, you're just like shocked that
yeah.
people believe these things and that these things are happening across a country that you live in. And you're like, this is not what I believed could be even possible.
Right. And then I read Hide by Kirsten White, and it was a book, and it was fine.
Okay.
It was, I
And
mean,
that's
I
it.
got married
Okay.
last month. It's just like, I don't know. It was a spooky season book. I picked
Okay.
it up because it was on the end of a bookshelf, and sometimes I
Sure.
like reading it. Positives, it's LGBTQIA plus. It has those types of themes, but it's about people who get pulled in for a prize of like $50,000 if they play a game of hide and seek at this abandoned amusement park,
Okay.
and then people start disappearing. And
Oh
they all think they're
no.
found, but it seems like there might be some
Oh
monstrous forces
no.
about. And like it was 236 pages. I think
Sure.
the author did a very effective job at a horror novel that had a lot in it for 236 pages. I was actually
Mhm.
relatively impressed, but like I don't think it's the best book. I don't think people should run out and go read it unless you like a spooky book and you would like a quick read. I don't
Okay.
like it's a book where I'm like, I was neither overwhelmed or underwhelmed. I was just whelmed. And that was,
I love it when people say they're just whelmed.
yeah, I was just whelmed. And I think,
Just whelmed.
you know what? For a horror novel, that says a lot. Like, I think
Yeah.
there are, especially when it's like a horror thriller, which is what this fell into, you and I have gone on record that we think most thrillers are bad. And
Yeah.
honestly,
I
I
will
did not
stand by
think
that.
this thriller was bad. So, did that mean it was good? I don't know, but I know that it
hmm
wasn't bad. And I think that's a
Okay.
pretty impressive thing for a
You know what?
thriller
That's a
nowadays.
feat
Yeah, it is a
to not be
feat. And
bad.
so I was impressed with it. I thought it was good. It had like good energy of like, I don't know, very like, ooh, everyone's out to get us. And then we find out that it could be right. And you're like, ooh, okay, all right, supernatural thriller on our hands. So, and I thought there was enough there to like have a few surprises and have a few like, oh, I didn't see that coming, you know.
Does it
But
delve into the horror quite a bit or not much?
Not, I mean, it's mostly like blood and guts and things like
Okay,
that. Like it'll dive into that, but not too much. So it's, I mean, it's 236 pages. Like it can't do that much.
sure.
Like,
I was
um,
thinking about this the other day because somebody on Instagram was saying, because everybody on Instagram right now is, I think, kind of everybody online that I
it's tired.
associate with is kind of looking for some positivity. So someone was looking for like horror recs and saying that
Mm,
they really like horror. And I said, hey, like, share some, because I don't read a lot of horror, but I think I would like to read more of it. I think I do
yeah.
like horror when I read it. But I can't necessarily handle horror movies, but reading horror I can handle for whatever reason. And I was like, yeah, share some horror recs, but I think I'm like a very specific type of horror, which
Hmm.
is the type of horror that is like Earthlings, where and this sounds so weird
It's
because
almost
it's
like
just like
dread.
it's just like really bizarre, tragic things happen. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? And I don't
Yeah.
know why that is part of me that I'm like, you know what book I really like? Earthlings. And if people have read this book, they're like, what?
I think
But
it's good to have some of those
I,
though.
I
So
do too. And I think that that's the type of horror book that I would like recommendations for. And I think
yeah.
you would also fall into this
Yeah. I
like
like
realm
more
of liking more of the
unsettling.
unsettling,
Yeah.
shocking type things.
Yeah, and this I don't think it's unsettling or shocking, but it
Okay.
was a fun, I would say it's a fun, easy horror. So like if you want to ease your way into seeing different tropes, like go
Okay.
for it.
Okay.
But yeah. All right, shall we dive into the book?
Yes, the
First night,
fires of
the fires of
treason.
treason. So we open in the fires of treason as a man named Greg comes home from the
Greg.
war. Greg
Greg.
with General
Gregnant.
Howard behind, and he
General Howard's
thinks
like, I hate that guy.
he was like, he committed treason. And I'm like, well, technically he did.
Aha!
New twist. He did, in fact, maybe commit treason.
Plot
Was it
twist. He
bad
did.
treason? Yes, but still. So Greg is like, we must get home because I wish to see my sister.
Mm-hmm.
And then we
Because he's been
cut,
gone for like 6 months or something.
yeah, 6 months, and he's been fighting in a war. And apparently, Greg let some people go and didn't kill all of the rebels, which is like
Yeah.
thousands of people. It was so confusing where the king is like, I wanted them all dead. And it's like, that is a large amount of death then.
It was a
Like,
lot of people. I can't remember how many it
yeah.
was, but it was, I want to say it was thousands, I
Yeah, it
believe.
was, I think it was like 2,000 people. And he was like,
Yeah.
hey, we've already lost like 1,000 of them. So, like, I just want us to have actual subjects. And
Hmm.
the king was like, not good enough. I wanted all 2,000 murdered by you personally. So that's
With
fun.
my axe and my bow.
And so then we cut on over to Elizabeth, who is the youngest princess, and
Mhm.
she's hanging out with her ladies'
Princess of
maids,
Genovia.
and they're all talking about the different skills they have. She's a good painter, but she can't paint swan necks.
Yeah, she
And
gets like
then
very upset about that too, where somebody like comments on it. She's like, "What do you see here? This looks terrible. It looks like a
and they're like,
giraffe. I made the neck
you're
so long." I'm like,
really good. And
"Wow,
she's like, and they're like, just make the swan bigger. And she was
make the
like, that's
body
an
bigger."
idea.
And I'm
Um,
like, "Yikes!"
and so then she hears that Greg is coming back and she makes sure that his favorite rabbit stew is on the menu.
Which
Um,
doesn't sound good to me, but okay.
I mean, go off, King,
I
or not
That sounds
King.
like a Gollum meal.
And so then she runs to Greg to welcome him home, and she like hugs him when his armor is still on, and I'm
Hmm.
like, that has to be difficult.
Well, they make a comment about it about like, how can you even move in this?
I
And he's
know.
like, I guess I do plenty of movement in this, unfortunately.
And he is, there's a moment where he's like talking to Elizabeth and he calls her Bessie or Bess.
Mhm. Yeah, he calls her
And
Bess most of the time.
she is sitting there like, you've changed. You've become harsher. Because he like talks about how she can't like kill anything. And to get the king's
Hmm.
approval, she has to get a thicker skin. And
Hmm.
she's like, war has changed you. And I'm like, yes, war and murdering
War does
people
that.
does that to people, actually. But she's
She's
16.
like very
So
disturbed by it though, because
yeah.
she's like, what? He was usually impervious to all of this hate and killing, and
Well,
now he wants to do it. What?
in
It's
her
like,
defense, her dad is a very angry man and abusive
yeah,
as the king. Again, he wanted to murder many, many people and have his
King
son do it
Charles,
in
correct?
order, yeah, in order to prove that he is a man. He had to kill a
Hmm.
lot of people. And so that's kind of where this is coming from, where I think she gets
Yeah.
really, it's like a trauma response from her, where she's worried that
Hmm.
he's turning into their father, but at the same
And
time, she's
we
not
also
giving him
learned
enough
too that,
credit.
yeah, we also learned too that she even like gets nervous to the point of like when people drink too much, she's like
Hmm.
worried, what's going to happen? You've drank so much because their dad has issues with alcohol too. So,
Yes.
and turns to violence when he consumes. So it's something that she worries about also.
Yeah. But like we also see glimmers that like Craig is a little bit more sympathetic than she is, because like
Hmm.
she's gossiping with him and he's like, you shouldn't gossip. That's not
There's also an
okay.
age gap too, where Greg is 22 and
Hmm.
Elizabeth or Bess is 16. So
Yeah.
there's that.
And they talk about the fact that the dad sent him to war to like toughen him up.
Hmm.
And he tells her that he only killed 36 of the leaders instead of all of them, but he took out the ones who were the most powerful.
Hmm.
And that the servants are definitely listening to everything they say.
Oh
And she
yeah.
keeps being like, oh, I keep forgetting they're here. And I'm like, don't. Your dad is an
Like,
abusive
yeah,
nightmare.
don't.
Remember that they're going to
He's
tell him
going to use
everything.
everything against you.
So he also asks after, or he says like, "Oh, look in my bag," and she pulls out like a huge emerald, and she's like,
Hmm.
"Thanks, I guess." And it's like, "Girl, why did you think that was
Why did
for
you think that was
you?"
for you?
And he's like, "I'm going to propose to my girlfriend." Uh,
Lucy.
and she feels horrible, and she's like, "Well, I sent her away." And he's like, I knew you didn't like her, but why did you send her away? And I'm like, you should have led with the reason why. Like, because now
Yeah.
she's like begging him to listen to her and be like, can you listen to why I sent her away?
And she's like,
And
we need
he's
to
like,
talk in private. We need to talk in private. And he's like, no, it can be said here. I'm
so
like,
then she's like,
okay.
well, he was fucking our cousin. And he's
Oh.
like, you're a liar. And she's like, well, I followed them and I saw quite a bit of it, which I'm like, Elizabeth, are you just hiding in the bushes watching them have sex
It
in
seems
the
like she has a lot of hatred for Lucy because there are even like inappropriate comments
Yeah,
made
she
that I'm not a
calls
big fan
her.
of.
I mean, she is 16 and she's defending her brother and she really hates
Yeah.
Thomas, who is the cousin that this girl
Yeah.
be fucking. But at the same time, it is a little strange and a little
Yeah.
weird how obsessed she is with slut shaming her.
Yeah.
Because again, I mean, this is a very specific time period, but we find out that
Hmm.
like Lucy wanted to get away from her where she was living,
Hmm.
and that is one of the only ways women could remain in power or have any say, is like through
Yeah.
marriage. And so if you found like
So
there's a
she was just
very
trying to improve her station, really.
yeah, and there's a very specific like, well, I do think this is like the biggest issue Elizabeth has, is she often does not see her own privileges.
Hmm.
And so she does not see like, well, I'm a princess, so I don't have to think about these things. But like this girl obviously did have to
Yep.
think about these things and did fall in love with someone else, even if he is a monster, according like,
Hmm.
because he sounds like a monster. She is allowed to love a monster.
Yeah.
Um,
Unfortunately, not everybody loves great people.
yeah, exactly. So I don't love the slut shaming, but
No,
Greg,
but it's there.
but Greg also responds very poorly, and he's like, "You're dead to me." And it's like, well, that seems like an overreaction to finding out that your sister caught your girlfriend
And
cheating on you.
like also, you haven't
Straight from
been
Domingo, I mean.
back that long, you know. Yeah, straight from Domingo. Yeah. I feel like he hasn't even been back that long or anything either, so
Right.
it just seems a little like quick
It
to
was
be
very
like,
fast
"You're dead to
paced.
me. Don't
You're
speak to me again." And she's like, "What?
I know.
I don't like you, and now you're this evil guy who wants to kill people
Well,
and
then he goes
also
down
marry a bad woman."
and he goes down to dinner, and he like literally just came back from traveling and was like
Yeah.
rushing home. And the dad's like, you made us wait long enough." And he is trying to give him like the play by play of the fact that he didn't kill all the people his
Hmm.
dad wanted him to kill. And Howard is like, I'm going to say he's treason. Oh, and also when they were talking about how Bernadette, their older evil sister,
Hmm.
wants to overtake the throne, and she has a lot of
Hmm.
people in her quarter. And like Greg is doing what all Gregs do and not
It's a
listening
Game of
very
Thrones.
well. Yeah, it's Game of Thrones, and Greg is like, no, I'm a boy, so of course I'm going
That
to be
could
king.
never happen.
And guess what? It happens immediately because
Yes.
Howard is like, I want him for
Because Howard is
treason.
Team Bernadette.
And Bernadette is like, I agree. And so the king announces that he is a traitor or who committed treason for not killing the people the king told him
Hmm.
to do. Again, he
Which
didn't.
technically true.
It is technically the letter of the law of treason is you went against your king. So he did in
Hmm.
fact commit treason. But they're all like, but Elizabeth
Not
is
saying
like,
we're not condoning it.
no,
Like
no.
we're
He
just
did,
saying that he technically did commit treason,
but he
even if
also
he did it in the
gets
name of like being a decent person.
he did get convicted without a trial, which is a big old
Yes.
bummer. Because the king is like, well, you disobeyed me, so
So
trial
they just throw
over.
him out in the dirt is what
And he
happens.
doesn't get to like stop in his room to like get things. He just
No.
leaves. And so he like walks all the way
He's
to
like, you know what?
Lord
I'll go see
Rochester's
Lucy's.
estate.
I'll go see
He's like,
Lucy.
Lucy never cheated on me. And then he breaks into her home, which again, like,
Because he hears
way to
people inside like moaning.
he breaks into the house. Like he's just like, I'm gonna climb a tree and climb into her house. And I'm like, she's gonna freak out if a man just suddenly comes into her. She doesn't know you're back from the war.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway,
But
he
then
like
she finds out
then she
because
finds out
she's in there
because
naked with
with
Thomas.
Thomas, and Thomas is like, she loves me, not you. And they've been together for 5 months since Greg left for the war, which means she was actually faithful to him until he left for the war.
Yes.
So,
Well,
maybe she
and Greg
just
is like
forgot to
so
break up
mad
with
because
him.
he's like you couldn't even wait a month, and it's like, well, she waited 1 month.
And so then, like, a servant comes in and tries to like stab at Gregory, and then
Mhm.
Thomas and him get into a scuffle, and Greg is defending himself, and he ends up accidentally stabbing Thomas and
Hmm.
fleeing.
He thinks he fatally wounds him too.
And so, and this happened so fast because like it's been
Yeah.
like maybe less than 24 hours, and Bernadette
Hmm.
is already throwing her coronation ball to be like
Yeah,
almost
she's like,
queen,
I'm gonna be the queen,
and we
and you know
find
what I love? Fire.
she
And we're
really
gonna
loves
have
fire.
the fire guy is here. Fire guy, fire
And
guy.
she gets to set him on fire. I do think it is very funny how evil Bernadette is just Bernadetting over everywhere, where
Yeah.
Elizabeth like calls her Bernadette,
Yeah,
and
that's why I
she's
said
just like,
earlier, Bernadette.
oh, I get to light someone on fire. And she's just sitting there like, Elizabeth, aren't you excited that the fireman is here? And Elizabeth is like, I mean, our brother just committed treason, so could you
Yeah,
like
she's like,
calm
I
down?
don't necessarily get the draw to the fire guy, but
But I mean, like, I guess if you do, you can't
if
make me
if
be
that's your
excited for
thing,
fire. And so she goes to burn him when all of the sudden this man comes running in, and it's Thomas's daddy.
mhm,
And his name is Salvatore. And he's like, your son stabbed my son in cold blood, and I want him to die. And
yeah,
Bernadette
so
and the
this is
king
their
are like,
uncle, correct?
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
this is their uncle. We find out that Thomas is super evil. He like once stomped on a bunch of baby birds in front of
Hmm.
Elizabeth. And so she was like, she kind of was like, well, I'm glad he's not dead, but am I?
Right.
Like,
She's like,
and the king and Bernadette are like, well, he's not under our protection anymore, so you could kill him. And then Elizabeth like
well, then
walks
they
up
mention
and
even something like, should we just have an assassin? That
yeah,
would
we'll
be
hire an
easier.
assassin. And Salvatore's like, no, I want to do it myself. And Elizabeth walks up and like bitch slaps Bernadette. And I was
Yeah.
like, you have quite a bit of power for a girl who's like, I'm just powerless. And I'm like, you slapped your sister
The
and you seem
ability to be
fine.
able to do that in a crowd and everything with like all these people standing around and not have any repercussions, I think
I mean,
is a
she has
lot
the
of
repercussions of
privilege.
her dad like threatening her and saying like, I
I
could
mean,
beat
he
you, but
shakes her or something,
yeah,
but
and he like holds onto her arm really sharply and things like that. So he is abusive, and he will
hmm.
maintain his
But
abusiveness.
still, even just her ability to like feel comfortable doing that, like a lot of people in those type of situations do not feel like they would ever have the ability to do that.
Exactly. So it was very but you do find out that like I think there's a lot of generational trauma where like the
Oh
girls
yeah.
answer quickly to just start beating each other up until the king is like, you bring shame upon me. I order you guys not to do this. You will fall in line behind Bernadette, or there will be consequences.
Hmm.
But Elizabeth is like, no, I'm gonna actually sneak out of the house and go warn
Yeah.
Greg. And her only intention is to like find him, warn him, and then like leave again.
Yep.
So I do love this where she dresses down in old scullery clothing, and she is a 16-year-old princess. So like
Yeah. She's in
Quirk does
rags.
not hold back from her being like, this is really gross. I don't like it. And I'm like,
Hmm.
well, yeah, princesses would be annoyed by that. So good job. But she
It's
also has to
funny
go
too because like she goes and
into the
meets
kitchen, and
this.
she's crawling on the ground too. Like she's like crawling and sneaking things. It's so funny to imagine her like being like, Shh, grab a loaf of bread and stick it in my basket, and then like crawl at the crowd out. And I'm like, you're dressed in rags. Are people really gonna recognize you?
Well, what I
Like,
think is funny though is that it's pointed out that even though she's dressed like that, it's still one of those like things where it's like you can take the girl out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the girl type situations where it's like she goes and meets this other woman and the woman like clocks right away like this is somebody of noble
oh yeah.
lineage because even though she's like in rags and stuff, just like her mannerisms, her curtsying and the way she expects to be treated and stuff, it's like, yeah, obviously you're
Well,
not a scullery.
before she does that, she does get help from a stable boy who also clocks that it's her. He's just like,
Yes.
Your Highness. And he helps her. And she does say, like, you need to leave now. Take this perfume I have
She's like, go
and like
to my
sell it.
uncle
And my
and there'll
uncle's
be a
like
job for you.
nephew will get you a job, another uncle. And so yeah, she goes, she camps overnight and she does not sleep well. And then there's like a huge storm. So she goes into this lady's house named Mary. She says her name is Dorothy, and she takes a bath. She like has to pull her own water, and it's very frustrating to her.
Yeah, she's
But
like,
then she
why do
like
people
just
take baths so much? This is so hard. I should have
and then she just
told
like
her to give
gets
me a bath.
naked in front of Mary and like throws her clothes on the floor and is
Hmm
just like sitting there washing. And Mary is like, "Oh my gosh, I thought I recognized you. I went to the castle recently. You're the princess." And she's like, "No,
hmm
no, I'm not." And she's like, "Yeah, yeah, you are." And she
And
also
she's
like,
like, yeah, you're Greg's
yeah, she also like
sister.
bulldozes her into going to Catholic church with her the next day,
Yeah,
even though the princess isn't Catholic. She's like, my brother is
he's a priest.
he's a priest, so you'll have to meet him. And she says that like the dad like sent out all these announcements that Greg committed treason and no
Hmm
one should help him and they should be searching for him and like hunt him down. And she's like, man, I better get going right away. And they talk about how the Lord will protect them and all this stuff. And then like Mary gets offended that uh, Elizabeth won't share a bed with her, and
hmm
wants to sleep on a trundle bed, but Elizabeth's like, that's fine, we'll share a bed, and then shames this old woman for like being a working class person who
Yeah,
doesn't
for
smell the greatest.
smelling
Uh,
bad and like,
yeah,
okay.
okay, Elizabeth, check your privilege. And then we find out that like Greg is not having the time of his life. He's
hmm
soggy, he didn't have any food, he ended up having to like,
All he took was like an apple,
oh
like
my
that.
gosh.
And I'm like, this is a 22-year-old
They
boy. And then he like mentions like that was not enough food for a 22-year-old man.
I know. I do love that they keep making like growing boy references to this 22-year-old
Which
adult man.
I will say,
Uh,
like, even though like 22-year-olds are adults, like still I know people who are 22 who like even myself who would not have thought at 22 like, "Oh, you're going to be going on a long trip.
there's
Do
also
you need
just
more besides just an apple?"
right.
Nah.
There's also a whole lot of him being like, no one loves me. I betrayed Elizabeth because she couldn't even look at me when I was sentenced, and I deserve it. And so he's just like self-flagellating as he walks
Yeah.
in the cold and in the rain. And then he ends up having to like break in to steal some bread. And this is a weird thing where he's like, I've never had to stolen, but Elizabeth has. And I'm like, okay, out your sister in these
Yeah.
pages. Because she stole a marble from someone, and he once like said, like,
hmm
we have privilege, and you can't just take things because you
Yep.
want them. And now he's like, I'm no better than her. I'm like, well, you are starving, and you
I
just
mean,
stole some
it's a
bread in the
little
rain.
different in
Uh,
context, but yeah.
so he hides, he eats a little bit of bread, and Elizabeth has to go to church. She meets with the priest. They're talking about how, like, oh, people would back him because, like, your dad's evil. Like,
hmm
but when they go there, there is a baron who is screaming at all the townsfolk for stealing his bread. He accuses Elizabeth, and Mary is like, she was with me, calm
hmm
down. And then he has a hot son named Joshua. So
Baker's
Joshua,
son, where have we
yeah,
heard this?
and he stands up for her. So she uh Greg also like gets to a flooded road. He has to stop for a while and he catches a badger.
This is unbelievable to me because badgers are literally vicious
I
animals.
know.
I can't imagine that it was as easy as it was written here to catch and kill one.
He just brains it. And then he
I
like
know, I can't believe it.
and then he fails to cook the meat properly, so
I
he
know.
immediately gets sick.
This is an a absolute lesson for everyone in terms of
Don't
to,
cook your badger meat
and
properly.
no, to cook your food.
Cook your
Very
badger
timely
meat
for us in the
properly,
US.
everyone.
Pay attention, cook your food,
Ugh.
pasteurize your food. Come on.
Yeah. So anyway, she like goes into the woods. She sees the fire and she sees him like vomiting. And she's
Mhm.
like, "Hey, like Salvatore's after you." And he's like, "I killed Thomas." And she's like, "No, you didn't. He's alive."
He's
And he's
still
like,
alive, unfortunately, just a stab.
"Oh, okay. And then he's like, well, I'm glad I stabbed him. And she's like, don't you feel any regret? And it's like, Girl, you have been
She
judging
is
everyone.
so quick to just be like, how dare you not still have the same mindset that you did before war?
No. And then she like is quick to be like, did you have any patience for me when you treated me that way? And
Honestly, you
he's
doing that voice is exactly how I can picture it because it just seems like a little bit ridiculous. Some of her, like, come on, Elizabeth.
he's going to feel a little bit more like weird about stabbing someone or
Yes.
war than he is about like being a little bit mad at you when you got back and him saying
Yes.
something
It's
stupid.
different situations.
He immediately is like, I'm so sorry. And he's like, I'm just so glad you're here with me. And she's like, I'm not here with you. I'm leaving right now. And she like leaves her horse and gets
Gosh.
up and like tries to go. Um, and so she's like, I warned you, Salvatore's coming. Watch yourself. And then immediately Salvatore comes as he's
Yeah.
like vomiting.
She can like hear him stampeding on his stallion like
And
down
he has
the
like
way.
a ton of weapons. And she all of a sudden is like, oh, so like I left my brother who cannot defend himself.
He has food poisoning and
Yeah.
whoops.
And so then Salvatore like shoots him with an arrow in the
Yeah.
gut. And this is a very funny moment where Elizabeth takes her time getting there, where Salvatore is like holding a knife to Greg's throat. And I'm like,
Hmm.
he could cut him at any single moment. Like,
But
time
no, he's
is
got to
of
do
the
the
essence.
evil villain monologue.
But he definitely has an evil villain monologue moment where he's sitting there with a knife and he's like, I've
He's
been
like,
waiting to do
"Do
this
you
for
want to know
years.
why I'm doing this?" And he's like, "I don't know, probably because you hate me and
To give
I
Elizabeth enough
stabbed
time to like
Thomas."
go
And he's
through
like,
this.
"No, it's because
And it's like to give her enough time to get to his horse and
yes,
grab a little like
a
um
slingshot."
a slingshot. And she tells him like she comes up on him and she's like, you better not cut my brother. I once dumped a bucket of feathers on you with this, and I'm a
And
good
tar.
shot. And so
And he's like,
Greg is
"That's a
like
woman's weapon." And she's like, "This puny thing could take you out." And it in fact does.
and it does because she throws a rock at him and she does in fact kill him, which
Yeah.
I did not expect with how
I wasn't
comical it
expecting
was.
killed.
No, I was expecting like he got knocked out. He
I
got
was
like this.
expecting like he's knocked out, we got to get going.
This book did not have the energy of Salvatore is about to die, but
No.
in fact, he did die with the slingshot. And so
I
she was
was
like,
also shocked by that. I was like, "Oh, interesting." I thought it would be more of a situation like, "Hurry up, Greg. We
I
gotta get you
know.
over to so and so's place because he's gonna wake up soon."
But he like kind of, she thinks he's dead, but he isn't. He just passes out. And so
Greg,
she,
this is, right?
Greg, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. And so she's like, Greg is not invincible. And she's very sad about it. And she's very sorry about not being
Mhm.
with him. And so she tries to like put him together as much as she can, but then she drags him on blankets to Mary's house.
Yeah, she like hooks him up to her horse basically, and Lavender drags him over there. And
Oh
she's like,
yeah.
"Don't worry, Mary will
She
take care of you."
she bathes in lavender and she names her horse
And her
Lavender, and she's
horse is named
obsessed with
Lavender.
lavender because
She loves
Bernadette hates
lavender,
the smell and it makes her sneeze. And
which is
honestly,
funny.
I do enjoy that level of pettiness in a 16-year-old who's like,
I
I really
mean,
hate my older sister, so you want to know what I love? What she hates. Like,
so like I know that we've pointed out some annoying things about Elizabeth, but some of this like tracks honestly for
oh,
16 year
she's a
olds.
very 16-year-old
Like
girl. Like,
this all makes sense to me,
oh
honestly.
yeah,
Like the pettiness, the like over the top reactions to things. A
Quark
22-year-old being
does.
like, bring it back into context here. And it's like, no, this all
There
tracks.
are so many books where it's like, I am the most powerful and I'm the most resilient. When I'm like, nope, I remember what I was at 16, and I too would have bathed
Yep.
myself in lavender if it would have pissed one of my older sisters off.
Yep.
So she's not wrong.
Hmm.
I have actually slapped my cousin once. So like, you do stuff when you're young.
Sure.
So
Sure.
anyway, they get back to Mary. We find out that her dad was a physician. But like her brother, she's like, we have to go get my brother, but also I can handle this myself. It's a very weird line that Mary often walks where she's incredibly
Yeah.
capable, but her brother is
But at the same
a
time, she's like,
patriarchal
it's the
nightmare.
patriarchy, and
Yeah.
he's a priest, and we definitely fall within this.
So she makes Elizabeth help her. She like cauterizes the wound. They keep him
Hmm.
like all bandaged up, and then they have like he has to be there. uh they have to watch him all night and make sure they're cleaning the bandages every hour, and then the brother comes over the next day And he kind of like Elizabeth is like, we're gonna be found. And this brother gets the work done. This priest
Yeah.
is in it for the good fight because he's like, well, I have already buried the body and I have destroyed the campsite, so no one will know that he is missing.
Hmm.
And you guys are safe here and you guys will stay locked in here. And like they have an underground railroad-esque cavern in the house, like basement where they can hide them in case someone comes
Yeah,
knocking.
apparently they used to like slaughter their own meat and everything, so they have like this curing area downstairs that they're like, nobody will check in there. It's a perfect place to hide you if we need to, but we'll get going in the morning to, or whenever he's well, to this
And then,
other
yeah, they
place.
said he's going to be there for like 2 months. He has to
Hmm.
recoup for 2 months. But during that time, he's already reached out to the monks at this like place that's very far away.
And he's like, don't
And
worry, the Catholics are behind you. We're
yeah,
rallying together.
you want to know who the saviors are in this? Catholics.
The
And she,
Catholics.
of course, she's like, well, I'm not Catholic, so I can't be a nun. And he's like, oh, honey, we wouldn't want you as a nun.
Yeah, they're like, you wouldn't be a good nun.
You would not last. And they're like, but they will
We can't
hide
solve a
you.
problem like Maria.
Maria. We can't solve a problem like Bernadette. And so then we just have a lot of like her having nightmares, Greg
Hmm.
recuperating, a lot of discussions about like Elizabeth being a little bit spoiled, being like, I
Yeah.
have to help with everything. And Greg is like, you should be a nicer human,
But
but
also
also
it's
I'm gonna
very
drink
much
a lot. And it's like, well, both of you are doing very age appropriate things, but you're also being nightmares to each other.
yes.
Like,
But it's still very much within that realm of like this tracks where it's like they ask her like, "Hey, can you wash that dish?" And she's like,
yeah.
"I do everything around here." And it's like that was just
I have
one dish.
I want to bathe every day, so I have to pull in my own water, and this is horrifying. Um, and so during this time, like he also has a one-on-one with her where he's like, "Look, I always knew Lucy didn't love me," and then she was like, "Well, then why were you such a dick to
Right.
me?"
Then why did you react that way? That makes zero sense.
And he's like, I don't know. It was just so hard. And I felt like I was losing everything. And all my life I felt undeserving. So it felt like that was proving it. And she was like, you were always deserving to me, Greg. And I was like, okay, calm down, you two. You guys need to take all the chill pills in the world. Um,
Yeah, because it does border on like, oh, this is like maybe a little too lovey.
yeah, it does get a little too lovey for me sometimes. So, but they do like get things off their chest,
Yeah.
except for when she's screaming at him for drinking too much and he's screaming at her for
Well,
not
and
wanting
there
to
there
wash
is more
dishes.
context given here too because we learned that like their mother died shortly after Elizabeth was born and like Greg had kind of a rough time apparently like Bernadette was the
Mm-hmm.
like golden child, she's the oldest and the father like really loved her. And then Greg for whatever reason was never well liked and then
Mm-hmm.
shortly after Elizabeth was born their mother dies and
Yeah.
it sounds like this was really like a hard thing for their father, and he then turns to alcohol and became very even worse.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying like the dad's actions are okay, but we do get context as to why the dad is the way he is and why like Elizabeth reacts to learning that her brother is drinking like very
Yeah.
poorly and like over the top, like, no, don't drink, and like trying to slap alcohol out of his hands. Is like, okay, well, not everyone is going to react the same way to this. And unfortunately, your dad has a substance issue, but hopefully your brother does not. And it's okay
Yeah.
if he has like a single glass of wine.
Except he keeps drinking ale to like dull the pain, and it does seem like he is like having issues with that. But
Hmm.
we also find out during this time that Father Timothy is like, "You're ready to like you're gonna run a revolution." And Greg
He's pushing a little hard.
But Greg is also like, I'm very uninterested in that. And he's
Yeah.
like, but you have a lot of power and you have a lot of privilege. And
There's a
Greg's
lot of
like,
people who would back you.
I'm very uninterested in that. But he and
Mm-hmm.
Bess have decided that they're going to like stick it out together. They're going to have each other. This is also where we find out that Timothy does not believe that women have any role in stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth is like, Mary, you're pretty powerful in your own. Like, why is he acting
Mm-hmm.
like that? Um, she also gets to flirt a little with Joshua.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because he's like,
they
I remember you.
you want to try this little maze scone, little lady? She's like,
And
I
he's like, don't
love
eat that
that.
tart. That's
And-
for common people. Have a scone.
I don't like tarts. Lucy is one. And so they flirt a little bit. And they, she kind of like we find out that she's not eating a ton because Greg has
Hmm.
to eat a lot of the foodstuffs and like
Sure.
Mary doesn't have a lot. And so this is where Greg is like, you're being really ungrateful. Like, Mary doesn't have to help us as much as she is. She
Hmm.
struggles. And so, like, you do owe her some of your time and
Yeah.
energy. And she's very frustrated by this. And she's like, I'm the one doing everything. I've been up all night and this is ridiculous.
And I feel like she's still not even doing that much. Just from the
No.
description, it's just very much like a high schooler being like, I do all the work around here.
Yes. And Greg also says, like, throw me under the bus if I die. Like, you have to.
Hmm.
You cannot
Yeah.
like keep your head up. If I die, go back to the palace, say that like you've been hiding or you were kidnapped. Like, do
Hmm.
not say that you were with me.
And she
Um,
agrees to that.
Yeah. And Elizabeth has to tend to the animals, which is just so
Hmm.
much. And he like listens to her cursing and complaining. And this is where she was like, she's cursing and complaining. And Greg is like, you should be more grateful. And I'm like, let the 16-year-old have her moment, Greg. Like,
Yeah,
don't
the
steal
thing
her
is, like
struggle.
with the age group between these two, like they're just far enough apart in age where it's like he's 22 and he is like kind of over some of the emotional like
Yeah.
outbursts that she's having, and he's like, I'm an adult, and at the same time it's still like, yeah, but you also are
Yeah.
not that old. And
Yeah.
they're at the perfect age point where they're like just perfectly getting on each other's nerves.
But then like she does have these emotional reactions, which happens with children from abuse,
Hmm.
where she like throws a piece of dough at him, like an
Yeah,
entire loaf of bread, because she's like, rye bread, I've eaten so much rye bread. And so she like leaves, she fumes, and then she comes back and Mary's like digging dirt out of this dough
I
because she's like, we
know.
physically cannot waste food. We're half starved. And she's like, I'm very sorry. And she's trying to help pull it out when all of a sudden there is a knock at the door and they have to hide in
Oh,
the curing area. And that brings us to halfway through the novel. What a good
yay.
who's at the door, everyone. I
That
don't
was a good
know.
stopping point. I don't know how
It
we
was
managed
it
that.
was perfect. I read it and I was reading chapter 19 and I was like, this
Hmm.
is a great
Like,
stopping point.
oh,
They led it was
yay.
so much better than I threw bread at a wall.
Yeah. That would have
So
been honestly
and
a
then
sad
she
ending.
throws bread at a wall and she storms out. What happens next?
And Mary has
Um
to give her a lesson in privilege again.
But yeah, I think it's a good stopping point. I mean,
Yeah.
this is our first indie like historical fiction. So I
Historical
do
fic.
like
Yeah.
reading the historical fic to see like the different types. And like I said, I really appreciate that like these two are obviously like young adults who
Sure,
make
sure.
stupid mistakes. So I
I
can't
think
wait
you
to
and I
see what they do
enjoy
next.
being able to like delve into like the thought processes of younger people too, because we
Oh
were
yeah.
once younger people.
It's almost like we once too were 16-year-old
We once
girls.
were 22-year-olds who thought we knew it
Oh my
all, or
God.
16-year-olds who threw dough at a wall and ate scones to be fancy.
I eat scones to be fancy quite often,
I
so
mean, I think it's
uh,
pretty much regal. I do.
I think it's pretty much regal. So everyone, join us next week as we finish out the plot of the Fires of Treason.
Yes, this
Be
is a fun
careful.
book.
This
So,
is fun. So join along. Definitely support indie authors. That's the whole point of this. And join us next week. And while you're doing that, please make sure you're following along with us. We
mhm,
do have some updates. We are over on Instagram, but we are going to focus more on Blue Sky with just the way the world is.
mhm,
And we have turned
mhm.
our Twitter into update only moving forward. So we'll
Yeah.
post new episode stuff, but we're probably not going to be on there as much.
Mhm,
That'll be our new focus. If you do wish to help us with the Patreon, that helps us keep the doors open and pay for some of
mhm.
our wonderful feedback, such as
Keeps the lights on as it's
cook
getting
your own
dark in
badger
Hannah's room.
meat. I have a fire going so that I can save on my heat and not for aesthetic purposes. Um,
As
but yeah,
she
you
eats a
can
scone.
you can join us over on Patreon. You can also make sure that you're reaching out at ourpod@gmail.com or look what we're doing over on ourpod.com. We have the rest of the year pretty much posted over there.
Mhm.
And soon we will have the chapter breakdowns for season 7, which will be the Inheritance or the Broken Earth trilogy.
The
I don't
Broken
know.
Earth trilogy.
I
The
don't know why I
Inheritance
thought
trilogy is her other trilogy
that's okay. That's where it came from.
by N.K.
So
Jemisin. So we're
by
covering the
N.K.
Broken Earth
Jemisin. Yeah.
trilogy, which the first book is the fifth season. If anyone's wanting to pick that one up or get it on your wait list at the library,
Make sure you're reading it right now because I've heard these books are fantastic. I can't
they
wait to delve into them.
are.
So make sure that you guys are doing that, following along everywhere. And just thank you again for joining
Yeah,
us
we
for
really
Indie
appreciate the
Mission.
support.
We really do. So thank you so much, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.